Welcome to the Weekly Social, everything Katy, Fulshear, Richmond, Texas. Big shout out to everybody that supports our channel. We appreciate the 2,000 plus views a week that we're getting, so thank you very much. It keeps growing and growing. Today we have Priscilla Pfaff, a select title, as well as Keith Cothroll, Houston tax attorney.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up. This weekend we're going to have the Katy Rice Harvest Festival, which is
Huge
an
event.
annual shindig. They did the parade last weekend, if I'm not mistaken, and this weekend's the event.
And this weekend's the event, and they had the tasting for the rice. When was that? I think Wednesday night.
Oh wow!
And one of the chefs that I know was one of the judges for that, and they just had a ball. But that's what Katy's all about. That's what we're built on, is rice fields, right?
We were.
We were.
Past tense.
Yes. But that was the original Katy.
Absolutely. MKT, Missouri, Kansas, Texas, and that it became Katy, Texas, with all the rice fields.
Okay.
The KT is.
I never knew that.
Yeah, well,
Interesting.
somebody named Katy.
Yeah.
Somebody named after their wife or something.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
But Keith's a tax attorney, and right now it's what corporate taxes are due. Is that correct?
Corporate is due plus, if you file an extension in April, then that extension expires Monday.
So tell me, what is the difference? Okay, so you're a tax attorney, so versus a CPA. What's the difference?
Some of the things we do are the same, but what I do is I do tax advisory work and help people with their IRS letters.
Okay.
And also I'm licensed to practice in tax court, so I get more into the legal black and white letter of the tax law versus some of the other things. I don't get so much with reporting and the tax returns and all that.
Okay, so a CPA normally does that, but when they need more done, then they come to you. Okay.
You're the next level.
Okay.
The next level, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so thank you, because I always wonder, I mean, I know that you've got a massive resource being both, you know, and having that knowledge on both sides, on the taxes and the attorney. And so, but I've always wondered what makes it different, what helps.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of that, what are some of the myths that people think out there? I'm sure that crosses your desk when they're like, well, I thought I could do this, and then all of a sudden, but they couldn't. I mean, is there anything like that you can share with us?
Then he's got to go and help fight that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
People like to do a home office when they don't have a home office. So if you don't have a home office, you're not supposed to take one. So if you have an office somewhere else, and you work sometimes on the weekends, you're not supposed to take a home office deduction. Mileage is another one where people take more mileage than you're supposed to. They do it dollar for dollar, mile for mile. They don't take what they're supposed to take. A lot will look at, I get questions all the time about, well, my friend got an offer in compromise and he got a tax settlement. How come I can't have one? I said, because your friend's broke and you're not.
Oh, okay, all right.
So you need to, we got to look at each thing case by case. If you've got home equity, that's something you borrow against. They're not going to let you take a tax settlement.
So it's not a single swipe of the pen answer.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
Are you seeing more bankruptcies or any of that starting to come?
That's coming in a little bit. I do bankruptcy as well, consumer bankruptcy, and because what's happening is all the money that people got from their EIDLs, their PPP loans, that was just a band-aid for the problem that was always there.
Correct.
So that money's gone, and now we're starting to get to issues with
The problems are still there, but the money went away.
Right.
Right.
So
They got a benefit during COVID, and then but it's not.
So typically, I've had one case where we kind of said, okay, what are we going to do? Offer compromise in Chapter 7, and we kind of did it like this, and then at some point it's like, we don't have any more time, we got to go file Chapter 7.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, if we go through all the different chapters of the bankruptcies, that's a lot of information.
Oh yeah.
But
let's stay on more of the shiny side of the coin.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. Sorry, I about
expensive?
1031 exchanges
Yeah,
in the real estate field, you
Yeah.
know?
1031s are good. You've got to make certain that you're doing like kind for like kind property, which
Correct.
is, it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate, but it's got to, everything has to match up. So
Yeah, if it's
I
an
think-
airplane, it's another airplane.
airplane to airplane,
Okay.
residential to raw land is okay. So
Because you're going investment to investment, correct?
right?
I just wanna make sure that I'm
Yeah.
understanding it. That's always been my interpretation, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah,
Mhm.
investment to investment.
Okay.
So you could do that. There's also qualified opportunity zones. So I'm doing one of those right now where you
Okay.
can take a distressed property into qualified opportunity zone. You can take your gain. It's almost like a like-kind exchange where you're taking your gain from one thing, moving it over to that distressed fund, and then you can defer as long as and there's a ton of technical rules to it.
Mhm.
Sure.
As long as you do everything you're supposed to do, that gain that you had that you put into that fund is completely gets wiped out if you hold it long enough, up to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's something for real estate you can really get to, especially real estate investors. You can look into that.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Well, if it absolves it, that's huge, because a lot of times they're just kicking the can down the road, waiting for the capital gains to come down so that they can actually sell the asset and do the conversion then.
Mhm.
But that's something that I've never heard of,
Yeah.
Keith, so, no, that's great information, guys.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
That is cool.
And another thing for real estate that comes up a lot is the tax lien. What happens when you're at the title company and you have a tax lien and
Yes, please explain
So,
that.
I don't get a lot of those, but yes, we do get those.
We do get those.
And so some of y'all probably know what to do with that. It's a simple form to file with the IRS to get it. And essentially what the IRS does is they take their money, and if there's anything left over, the seller gets it.
Right.
But not everybody knows that. So
Right.
if anyone out there doesn't know how to do that, then reach out to me and I can help you with that.
Oh,
What if
thank
they
you.
owe more in taxes than what the equity is in the sale?
Then essentially the IRS will take the equity, and then you'll still have a balance left over at the end.
So
it
they
doesn't
will
matter.
convey the property to the
They'll
buyer?
convey it,
Okay,
but you just got to file that specific form to do it.
got it. Because I've always had it to where there was enough equity to cover either the income tax or the property tax.
Well, it also depends, right, if it's an investment property or your homestead, when the tax liens are on it.
As far as that, I mean, it's, of course, there's the mortgage on it too that has an effect on it as well. But
Right.
basically, the IRS, we file that form, they'll take what they can get, and then if there's anything left over, then you still have that balance to deal with.
Right, right. It's still on you personally.
It's
follows
still
Right.
there, but it lets you have clear title.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is huge because it gets them out from underneath an asset that's probably going upside down and making matters worse.
Right,
And somebody else can take over and pay the taxes. So
Exactly.
That's really good.
exactly. So that is good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we deal with that, but we always refer them. Please talk to your CPA or attorney and get all that taken care of.
Right.
Mhm.
Because IRS won't talk to us.
Yeah.
As a title company, they won't talk to us. They have to talk to the seller.
I call it staying in my lane.
Yeah.
Above my pay grade.
Yes,
You know?
yes, the little lights on the mirrors go
Yeah.
off, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Can you help me? Absolutely. I'm going to refer you to this person right here.
Yes. And that's what's cool is you're always offering the referral network for everybody and pulling that together and,
Sure.
and just not having Keith to have access to get something taken care of for somebody that is huge in our life.
There's an army of people, because people see me as the face of the company, but truth be told, the army of people behind me that nobody sees is what allows me to do what I do to help all these people.
Yeah, like Keith.
And
Yeah.
that's why we bring them in, so that people get to see these resources, so they can connect with them in the future if there's a problem or anything, and they can go directly to them. And I promise you, everybody that we've had, so they're top shelf great individuals, full. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So
Absolutely.
that's cool. So what else is coming out? Is there any changes, major changes this year that we need to know?
So one of the things that's coming up is the 1099K. which is where if you're paying people through Cash Apps or Venmo or something like that, if you do, they count all the transactions over $600, and so people are paying you that way. Now they say that, you know, spouse to spouse or friend to friend or sister to brother, like all of those aren't going to count, but I don't know how they're going to be able to determine what's what. So next year, starting in January, they're going to start counting that, and then you might get a 1099-K saying, hey, you gave all this money to somebody because you went and bought a headboard from them or something off of Facebook. So it's going to be real interesting trying to figure all that out.
On that topic, my son pays his rent to me through Zelle
Yeah.
at $13.50, which is over the amount, the 600.
Mm-hmm.
But I reconcile and book it. You know what I mean? So,
But you may get a 1099-K
yeah, I just
next year, but it's not going to be in place until 2024?
Right.
Okay.
okay.
So not
Yeah.
for 2024.
So it's just going to be a lot of having to explain, no, this is really, you know, my son's rent, or I pay groceries to my wife or whatever.
Right.
So you're going to have to document every transaction.
Just keep, yeah, that's how it works with the IRS. Is just keep good records of what you're doing.
Sure.
Because if they ever have any questions about what you're doing, if you have good records, you're going to turn out a lot better than somebody who doesn't.
Right.
So,
Which mine's reconciled with bank statements
Yeah.
and so on. So that. Right. At least I'm doing it right.
Yes.
Because you don't know what you're doing wrong.
But you'll get a 1099 from Zelle, from Venmo. They'll just, the
They'll
total
send it to
amount
you.
that you put in or transfer in that app, you'll get a 1099 on. Okay. PayPal, all that?
PayPal, all that.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're doing that essentially because, well, they want money. So it's the same reason they gig workers. They want to make certain that people tip income, that when they made all those changes, they want to make certain that you're reporting all your income. And so it's an easy way that people now can get away with not doing anything. And kind of on the side, get income and not report it. So they want to tighten all that up and do the same thing in crypto. They're getting all the loopholes tightened up
Okay.
so that they can make certain that all the
Okay.
incomes get reported and taxed.
Wow. Wow. One way or the other,
Yeah.
you know?
Crypto, I don't really understand crypto. I mean, I can't buy groceries and I can't buy a house or a car with it. So,
You actually can buy a house. You can. There was one in Austin a couple of months ago that sold with crypto. The thing is that, you know, prior to closing, 1 or 2 days prior to, that crypto's got to be changed into dollars.
right.
So if it, a couple of
So it
days
has to be
before there's
perfected
another,
into-
if there's enough in crypto to come to
Cash.
dollars, then we're
Versus
good to go.
accepting the crypto and then the rates change and then you could be a winner or a loser.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my,
Mhm.
that's basically my question.
Yeah, and HAR's gonna start putting it on, I think they're gonna add it to MLS, so that, to see if a seller wants to
For
take
form
a
of payment.
crypto contract.
Okay. I learned something new today. I have never heard that either.
But for us, as long as there's enough in the crypto to transfer over to cover the price, the sales
Who does
price,
the transfer on the crypto to the cash?
the buyer.
Right, okay. But it would be held here in an you would hold the crypto or just hold the cash in an escrow account a couple of days before?
A couple of days before, we'll hold it in an
Would be
escrow
the
account,
would
right.
be the cash,
Mhm,
okay.
mhm.
Oh, good stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's just a cash transaction.
right.
So it works the same, and you know, it's just that to me it just is that little craziness. What's it gonna be valued at right before closing to make sure we get to closing?
Sure. Because nobody wants a transaction to break out. There's a lot of time, effort, and resources poured into every real estate transaction.
So I would think that sellers may require that to be happening right at the beginning of a contract, you know, so that you make sure. That might be some way of making sure that it gets there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you don't want to get 3 weeks in and then find out that had 500,000 is worth 400,000, and we got a bad contract now. We have no way to perfect it.
Right.
So,
Right, and people have already scheduled their movers, and all that stuff
Lots
to
of
be
spinning
done,
plates.
and that's just, yeah, you can't have that a couple of days before.
No.
That's, too many lives are depending on all that.
Well, and it's a domino effect because most sellers, they're on a contingency to perfect their purchase.
Mm-hmm,
Most sellers don't go back to being renters.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
I don't know, that's interesting.
interesting.
But how are they gonna 1099 crypto, because how would you know what the,
They're not doing that.
Okay.
They're making the brokers report it. So that just came out this year. So if you're a broker dealer, you have to report crypto transactions that you're doing with people.
okay, alright, so you can't.
So wherever they house the crypto, the other ones reporting would.
Yeah. So if you're basically if you're offering it as part of your financial advisory, then it all gets reported.
Okay,
And it's kind of brand new, so they're starting to do it, and then eventually they're going to have a form that it's going to get done on. So it's all like a work in progress as far as getting that done.
okay,
Got it.
alright.
What else are you seeing out there in the tax bill today? Changes?
So the other thing too that's pretty important is the Corporate Transparency Act, and that is essentially where any business at all that where you have a beneficial owner, which is somebody that's at least 25% control over the company,
Okay,
the FINRA wants to have you report to those beneficial owners, and it's domestic. It's basically any entity that doesn't already, so title companies don't have to do it. I don't know about real estate companies, but if you already have a self-reporting thing that you have to do, they don't
Right.
make you do it. But pretty much any other entity has to file a specific form on January 1st. If not, the penalties are up to $10,000.
Oh, wow. Ooh.
And they're doing that because of cartels and things. They want to make certain that there's no secret people that are really running the business and they're hiding behind some entity that, terrorists or anything else. So
Like
they're doing that.
Chain LLC. I mean, there's all kinds of different
Yeah.
crazy way to structure stuff today.
wow, okay, that's
So that's
interesting.
coming up too.
So 25% or more ownership, and then you've got to provide your information.
It's just a reporting. You just have to basically give them your name and address, and then you're fine. But you have to report it substantial control or 25% ownership.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And then another thing that I do as well is property taxes on commercial and residential real estate. So
Oh, that's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Oh, big time, big time. So you do taxes on it, so you help fight?
I find them.
Oh, wow, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of the stuff that's on the ballot in November comes into fruition.
So-
I mean, going from 40,000 to 100,000 on the homestead exemptions, I think that's huge.
That already approved, that already got approved.
Oh, I thought it got approved to be voted on, and in November we vote on it.
Keith, I'm gonna refer to you, I believe it was
I'd
approved.
have to look at. I believe it was approved as well
Mm-hmm.
through the legislature.
Because we've already doing documentation for
Your
closings so
prorations are
that,
on the new ones?
yes,
Okay.
so that everybody's aware and,
Okay, great schooling today. Thank
yes.
you. Okay.
Yeah. But people call me all the time. My property taxes went up $100,000 or something like that. Values. The values.
Well, especially on commercial, because there was no ceiling. I mean, I had clients that it went up 500-600% versus what they were being taxed at. That's brutal.
And so we try to do the comps and the appraisals, and sometimes we file a lawsuit against the appraisal district. And I've got a couple of those I've got one right now in Fort Bend with an ag exemption. We're arguing over trees and beehives. So,
Oh my
Which is approved by the
gosh.
state. You can have a timber exemption, correct, and a bee exemption as well.
Right, right.
So we're just going about how many acres are here, and trying to do all that. So that's
What's the
interesting.
total acreage on it?
It is at least 5 acres for the beehives. You have to have 20 hives on, 20 on 5 acres, 10 trees on 20 trees on 10 acres, I believe.
Wow. Only 20 trees on 10 acres?
Yeah.
That's good
I
to know.
gotta, it's.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I would have thought there
outside
would
of that,
have
you
been
go
a lot more than
ag.
that.
You have to show cows or crops and
What about if somebody changes the exemption, takes away the ag exemption? Do you help out with, and let them know what all that's gonna,
Yeah, we
Transpire.
need to do that. Yeah,
Mhm.
we need to do that. We need to do
because there's a
that.
clawback period.
yes, sir.
I think they changed it from 5 to 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I believe you're right. I believe you're right. I haven't seen, thank goodness, we haven't
That
seen
just
one.
changed a couple years ago.
Yes, recently. So, but that's, you know, that's a major thing for the buyer to understand when they're taking over a property that has those exemptions, whether it be residential or commercial, that those exemptions stay or it's gonna go back. But we advise them to talk to the taxing authorities directly to find out exactly
Yeah.
the repercussions.
Yeah, as far as the number of trees,
Yeah,
don't hold me to it, so I'm just going off the
Sure.
top of my head. But
exactly. But that's interesting.
So we call that a disclaimer. Keith is not aware of the total amount of trees that need to be hunted at 10 acres.
Yes, yes. Oh, wow. That's good information. And that you're fighting for those, helping people do that, because it's a lot to understand and put together to make it.
A lot of people will sell their ranch land to a developer, unbeknownst to them, on the clawback of taxes. Unless they hold it for X amount of years under the ag exemption as well.
Right.
Yeah.
The seller's on
Right.
the hook for that,
Well,
right?
if the buyer's changing it, why wouldn't the buyer has been notified that there was the exemptions, the buyer is purchasing the property and they're removing the exemptions, so really it's the buyer that's gonna roll back on.
It'll roll back on the buyer for the previous 3 years? Oh, wow, okay. I thought it
That's
was on
why
the
it's,
seller.
that's why it's very important for the buyer to understand that.
Right.
You know, contracts, it's a negotiable part of the transaction, so it can be written in different perspectives.
Sure.
But the basic is, you know, you're gonna stay with that same exemptions that are on the property moving forward
If you're not
and,
going ag to ag, you're going ag to commercial or something, you
Mhm.
really need to get attorneys involved.
Right.
You do.
right,
Because it's
right,
a
so
lot
call
more
Keith,
complex.
please,
Yes.
call Keith.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, it is very complex. And we try to, we're that unbiased party to the transaction, so we like to advise them to talk to Keith and
Yep.
go that
And I
direction.
can't provide legal advice either.
Mm-mm.
So
That's why we
that
have those
tees you up for a lot of
partners.
conversations,
Yes.
Steve.
That's right. Absolutely.
So what else is going on? Some fun things.
You know, we got a few things that are coming up. They're coming down the pipeline. Not this month, but next month we ramp up for the Boys and Girls Country annual drive that we do for them, which is an orphanage. If you're not familiar with Boys and Girls Country, they are out in Waller. I've supported them for a few decades. Wonderful community for the kids. And a lot of people are under the misinterpretation that like with the annual Toys for Tots ride, which is great. I'm not discrediting that. But if you really dig into it and reach out to them, they're looking for stuff like bed sheets, shower curtains, pillows, day-to-day necessity type items.
And that's what's great. You always put on the flyers every year, you know, what things are really needed for them so that people know and are not buying things that are really not needed.
Exactly. So when we put it out through our database and all the fundraising that we do for the drop-off places, we want everybody to bring what they're truly trying to get.
Exactly.
And we also tie the animal shelters to it. We do the same thing because most people buy the big dog food bags, the big cat food bags, which they have all that, but
For
they
the
don't.
adults.
For the adults,
Mhm.
they don't have the puppy chow, the kitten, cleaning supplies. So we come up with a list from that animal shelter as well to convey exactly what they're in need of, so that they're not overran with a bunch of stuff that they've already got a bunch of. So.
Right. That's cool.
But yeah, we'll be marketing that heavily. We start that in November, right around Thanksgiving, and we run it up to Christmas. So any help, support, donations would be greatly appreciated. And it all goes to local charities, local cause. 100% of it. We retain none of it. It goes directly to the people and the animals in need.
And this is our quarter for giving thanks.
Yes.
Yep.
So this is what it's all about right now.
Every quarter, Red Lion Realty, we always pick something and we give it our all to help as much as we can with that cause, and then we move on to the next cause. So we try to.
You just did Alzheimer's.
Yep.
And y'all raised greater than what your projections were.
15% over our
Right.
goal. And before that, we did the back to school drive, and then before that, we
Blood
did
drive.
the blood drive.
Yes.
So, blood drive, back to school, Alzheimer's, and then the kids and the animals.
Kids and animals. That's a great way to finish off the year.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But if people need to connect and need to use you as a resource for tax implications or whatever's going on, what's the best way for them to connect with you, Keith?
Well, I think the easiest way is my phone number, which is 832-402-4440, or at Houston Tax Attorney, which you can find on Instagram. I have an email address. I'm based out of Spring Branch, but I can go anywhere. I don't even have to be in Houston. So if you have anything that's outside of the Houston area, it doesn't matter. I can still assist on it.
So anything in
the
Texas?
In the state.
In the country.
Oh, in the country.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a
Okay,
huge
that's
resource. And
huge.
he's nationwide.
That's huge.
We didn't know that you were.
Yeah, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
I've got a client in Fresno, and I told him, I said, I'm not going to go to Ritz Carlton. I'm going to have to go there in person. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. There isn't one in Fresno.
Yeah.
So I got a client in Fresno. I got one in Dallas I just finished. And I've actually, when I started doing this line of work, I was coast to coast, including Hawaii.
Wow.
So
That's huge. But what a benefit to so many corporations
What amount of
and companies.
information and resource that he has in order to do all that.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
huge.
Well, I mean, you're a resource for, I mean, Texas, we're seeing so many people coming in to Texas. And I guess what's the benefit to them for moving their companies to Texas?
and that's where it comes in too, is everyone coming into Texas, then you have state income tax issues and residency. And so I get those cases where they come in and they say, well, no, I really have to pay Pennsylvania tax. Well, let's count how many days you were there. You know, do you have a utility bill here? Do you have this thing, that thing? We put all that together and we would tell, Pennsylvania to take rocks if they have to.
Okay.
That's huge benefit. Huge benefit
So if
for
they're-
all these companies.
Working remotely here, but employed in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Is that what that
Then
applies
that,
to?
yeah, then if that happens, then what's your tax address? So you might be working out a residence in, but you still get your W-2 sent to, Virginia or something.
So does it go by your driver's license?
It's going to go based on whatever your tax home is. But if you're doing remote, if you're working, if you have a corporate apartment here and you get utilities and then you have some other thing, then it gets into the specific states of how many days were you in one state versus each other. So there's a whole lot of
Kind of like international
technicalities.
people.
That is exactly where I was
X amount of
going.
days or whatever. Right.
Yes, because when my dad worked for Conoco and, we were overseas and to get the benefit of being overseas, we had to be there a certain amount of time each year.
Yeah. So it gets into real technical. It gets real technical as to sometimes you have to pay both.
Wow.
So.
Oh,
And
so
then
talk to Keith
refer to the
before you have to
professional.
pay both. Yes.
Yes.
That's you don't want to.
That's the biggest thing I can say even today as well is, I tell people, I help you with your IRS letters. So if you get a letter from the IRS, don't ignore it, because what happens is when you ignore it,
It's
then
worse.
it gets worse, and either you're going to go to your bank one day and your money will be gone and they can't do anything once that happens, or if you get audited and you ignore it, then we get to the point where we can't. You might have all your records sitting in your garage. Well, we can go show that to them, but you got to open the letters. So you got to open your letters sooner rather than later and get me involved so I can help out more.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
Thank
well,
you.
Real quick before we wrap up, one more time, if they need to get a hold of you, Keith, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
It's going to be 832-402-4440, 832-402-4440.
Yeah, that's an easy number to remember. Yes, very easy.
Again, thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll
Thanks,
see you all
guys.
next week.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.